The silver ship moved through space without making a sound. Inside the vessel, senior agricultural scientist HFY stood before a wall of glowing screens. Her blue-green skin reflected the light from the displays as she studied the data flowing. Across them, the Zilithians had been mapping soil across different worlds for over 3,000 years. They knew more about farming than any other species in the galaxy. "Another dead world," muttered her assistant Krelvo as he pointed to the readings. "The magnetic fields are too strong. Nothing could grow in that soil." HFY nodded. She had seen hundreds of worlds like this one. The planet below them was called Kepler 442b by the humans who had discovered it. The soil contained too much iron. The magnetic fields that came from deep inside the planet made the ground hostile to any kind of plant life. Even the Zilithians, with all their advanced technology, had never found a way to farm on worlds like this. "Wait," said Krelvo, his voice suddenly sharp. "I'm getting some strange readings from the surface." HFY turned to look at his screen. The magnetic field scanner was showing unusual patterns. Instead of the chaos they expected, there were organized pulses coming from a small area on the planet's surface. "That's impossible," HFY said. "Natural magnetic fields don't behave like that." "It's not natural," Krelvo replied, adjusting his controls. "There's something down there. Something artificial." HFY felt her heart rate increase. The Zilithians had been studying agricultural science for millennia. They had encountered many species, but none had ever attempted to farm on magnetically active worlds. The technology required would be beyond most civilizations. "Take us down for a closer look," she ordered. "But keep us cloaked. I want to see what's causing these readings." The ship descended through the planet's atmosphere. The surface was rocky and barren, with patches of red dirt that sparkled with iron deposits. As they got closer, the source of the magnetic disturbance became clear. A small research station sat in the middle of a valley. It was crude by Zilithian standards, built from prefabricated modules that looked like they had seen better days. Solar panels covered the roof, and several strange devices were scattered around the compound. The devices were generating the magnetic pulses they had detected from space. "What species built this?" asked Krelvo. HFY checked the identification systems. "According to our records, this system was recently colonized by humans, but this can't be right. Humans are barely past their first space age. They don't have the technology for magnetic agriculture." A figure emerged from one of the buildings. It was definitely human, wearing a simple work suit and carrying what looked like a primitive scanning device. The human was male, probably in his 30s, with short brown hair and a beard. He moved between the magnetic devices, checking readings and making adjustments. "His equipment is so basic," Krelvo said with amusement. "Look at those magnetic field generators. They're held together with metal straps and wire. Our ancestors used better tools 5,000 years ago." HFY watched the human work. His name, according to the station's identification beacon, was Jake Morrison. He was listed as an agricultural engineer, working for something called the Terran Colonial Agriculture Initiative. She had never heard of the organization, but that wasn't surprising. Human space exploration was still in its early stages. Jake moved to a section of ground that had been marked off with stakes and wire. To HFY's amazement, she could see green plants growing in neat rows. The soil around the plants looked different from the rest of the planet's surface. Instead of the usual red-brown color, it was darker and seemed to have a different texture. "Run a soil analysis on that area," HFY ordered. The ship's sensors focused on Jake's test plots. The results made no sense. The iron content in the soil was still extremely high, but the magnetic field patterns were completely different. Instead of the chaotic interference they expected, the fields were organized in a way that actually seemed to help plant growth. "This is impossible," Krelvo said, staring at the readings. According to everything we know about magnetic soil dynamics, those plants should be dead. The iron particles should be preventing root development and blocking nutrient absorption. HFY studied the data more carefully. The human's equipment was primitive, but it was doing something that Zilithian science said couldn't be done. The magnetic fields were being used to restructure the soil at a molecular level. The iron particles were being arranged in patterns that created channels for water and nutrients to reach the plant roots. Jake walked over to one of his devices and made an adjustment. Immediately, the magnetic field pattern shifted slightly. The plants in the test area seemed to respond, their leaves turning toward the artificial field source. "He's controlling the magnetic fields manually," HFY said in wonder. "He's treating the soil like a living system." "But the theory is all wrong," Krovo protested. "Magnetic soil restructuring requires massive computational power and precision. Field generators. His equipment couldn't possibly maintain the stability needed for long-term plant growth." HFY continued to watch Jake work. He moved with confidence, clearly understanding his system despite its crude appearance. Every few minutes, he would check the readings on his primitive scanner and make small adjustments to his field generators. The plants continued to thrive. "Download everything," she ordered. "I want complete scans of his equipment, his soil composition, and his field patterns. Something is happening here that our science doesn't account for." As the ship's sensors gathered data, Jake finished his work and headed back toward the main building. He paused at the door and looked up at the sky, as if he could sense their presence. For a moment, HFY wondered if their cloaking system had failed, but Jake simply shrugged and went inside. "This human has achieved something we've been trying to do for centuries," HFY said quietly. "With equipment we would consider junk, he's made hostile soil productive. We need to understand how." HFY spent the next 3 days studying Jake Morrison's operation. The human followed the same routine each morning. He would emerge from his living quarters at dawn, check his equipment, and spend hours working in his test plots. His magnetic field generators ran constantly, creating patterns that changed throughout the day. The Zilithian scientist had run every analysis her ship's computers could perform. The results made no sense according to established agricultural science. Jake's method should have killed his plants within the first week. Instead, they were growing faster than anything in the Zilithian database for similar soil conditions. His technique violates 3 fundamental laws of magnetic agriculture, Krovo said, reviewing the data for the 10th time. The iron particles should be creating toxic barriers around the root systems. The magnetic field fluctuations should be disrupting cellular development. And his generators don't have enough power to maintain stable field geometries. HFY watched Jake through the ship's visual sensors. He was kneeling beside one of his devices, adjusting settings with a simple handheld tool. His movements were careful and deliberate, as if he understood exactly how each change would affect his system. Yet his plants continued to thrive. She sighed. "We're missing something important." A small ship appeared in the planet's atmosphere. It was another human vessel, much smaller than the Zilithian research ship. The craft landed near Jake's station, kicking up clouds of red dust. A woman emerged from the pilot's seat and walked toward Jake's compound. "Run an identification scan," HFY ordered. The ship's computer provided basic information. The newcomer was Dr. Lisa Chun, listed as a soil chemistry specialist. She was part of Jake's research team, though she had been working on another world for the past several months. Jake met Lisa at the landing pad. Even from their concealed position, the Zilithians could see that the reunion was emotional. The humans embraced briefly before Jake began showing Lisa around his facility. His excitement was obvious as he pointed to his test plots and explained his progress. Lisa examined the growing plants with obvious amazement. She knelt down and touched the soil, then pulled out her own scanning equipment. Her readings confirmed what Jake was telling her. The hostile magnetic soil had been transformed into a productive growing medium. The two humans talked for hours. The Zilithians' translation systems picked up fragments of their conversation. Lisa had brought supplies and equipment, but she had also brought bad news. Their funding was being cut by the Terran Colonial Agriculture Initiative. The project isn't showing fast enough progress, Lisa explained to Jake as they sat outside his main building. The Colonial Authority wants immediate results. They're shutting down the program in 2 weeks. Jake's reaction surprised the watching aliens. Instead of accepting the decision calmly, as a Zilithian scientist would, he became agitated. He stood up and paced back and forth, gesturing toward his test plots. 2 weeks? He said. Lisa, look at what we've accomplished. This soil was completely dead 6 months ago. Now we're growing crops that could feed a colony. How can they shut us down now? Lisa looked tired. The bureaucrats don't understand what you've done here. They see primitive equipment and small test plots. They want massive agricultural complexes and guaranteed production numbers. Your magnetic soil technique is too new, too experimental for them. Vexthai found the human emotional response puzzling. In Zilithian culture, scientific failures were simply recorded, and the researchers moved on to other projects. There was no shame in unsuccessful experiments. But Jake seemed personally invested in his work in a way that Zilithian scientists never were. We need to document everything, Jake said, his voice determined. If they won't fund the research at least, we can preserve the data for future projects. The two humans worked through the night, taking measurements and recording every detail of Jake's system. Lisa's expertise in soil chemistry helped her understand aspects of the process that Jake had developed through trial and error. Together, they began to see patterns that neither had noticed working alone. The magnetic fields aren't just moving the iron particles, Lisa realized as she studied her readings. They're actually changing the chemical bonds in the soil. You've created a living system that responds to the planet's natural magnetic variations. Jake nodded. That's why the simple equipment works. I'm not fighting against the planet's magnetic field. I'm working with it. The generators don't need to be powerful because they're just guiding the natural forces that are already here. Vexthai felt a chill run through her body. The human had stumbled onto something profound. Zilithian agricultural science was based on the principle of technological dominance. They used massive machines and carefully controlled environments to force hostile worlds to become productive. Jake was doing the opposite. He was learning to work with the natural systems instead of overwhelming them. Commander Zeph Run, she called to the ship's captain. I need to speak with you privately. The commander joined her in the observation deck. Zeph Run was an older Zilithian with scars from his military service. He had little patience for scientific mysteries, but he respected Vexthai's expertise. What's troubling you? He asked. Vexthai gestured toward the human station below. Those humans have achieved something we've been trying to do for over 1,000 years. They've made magnetic soil productive using equipment we would consider primitive tools. Surely our technology is superior, Zeph Run said. We could build better equipment and improve on their methods. That's not the point, Vexthai replied. They're not using better technology. They're using better thinking. They've approached the problem in a way we never considered. Instead of dominating the hostile environment, they've learned to cooperate with it. The commander looked skeptical. Cooperation with soil? Cooperation with natural systems, Vexthai corrected. The human treats the magnetic field like a partner, rather than an obstacle. His simple generators work because they're part of a larger system that includes the planet itself. Below them, Jake was pushing one of his magnetic generators beyond its normal operating parameters. The device was crude and clearly running at dangerous power levels, but Jake seemed unconcerned about the risk. His focus was entirely on making his system work. Why does he care so much? Zephron asked, observing Jake's intense concentration. If the project fails, he can simply start another one. Vexthai didn't have an answer. The human emotional investment in scientific work was something Zilithian culture had never emphasized. Their researchers were skilled and dedicated, but they maintained professional distance from their projects. Jake's personal connection to his work seemed to drive him to find solutions that more detached scientists might miss. I think we need to keep watching, she said finally. There's more to learn here than just agricultural techniques. Jake Morrison stood in the middle of his test field at 3 in the morning, staring at his magnetic field generators. The deadline was only 10 days away. The colonial authority would shut down his project unless he could prove his system worked on a larger scale. But his current setup was already pushed to its limits. Lisa Chun found him there when she woke up for her early shift. She had been working around the clock to help Jake document his methods, but she knew they needed more than documentation. They needed a breakthrough. You haven't slept again, Lisa said, joining him among the growing plants. Jake shook his head. I keep thinking there's something I'm missing. The system works, but it's not efficient enough. We need to cover more ground with the same amount of power. The Zilithians watched from their hidden ship as Jake began dismantling his carefully arranged equipment. Vexthai was concerned. The human had spent months perfecting his current setup. Why would he destroy it now? What is he doing? Krelvo asked. His system is already working better than anything we've achieved. He's not satisfied with good enough, Vexthai replied, studying Jake's movements. He wants to make it better. Jake began rebuilding his magnetic field network from scratch. Instead of placing his generators in fixed positions, he connected them with cables that allowed them to move. The new configuration looked chaotic compared to his previous orderly arrangement. This is madness, Krelvo said. He's introducing variables that will make the system unstable. But Jake had a plan. He had been studying the planet's natural magnetic fluctuations for months. The magnetic field that came from deep inside the planet wasn't constant. It changed throughout the day, shifting with the planet's rotation and the movement of iron deposits far below the surface. Lisa, help me with the calibration, Jake called out. I want to sync the generators with the planet's natural rhythm. Lisa looked confused. But Jake, the natural field is chaotic. It changes every few minutes. How can we sync with something that's constantly shifting? That's the point, Jake said, his voice filled with excitement. We've been fighting against the natural field. What if we stop fighting and start dancing with it instead? The concept was revolutionary. Instead of trying to impose a stable magnetic field on the hostile soil, Jake wanted to create a dynamic system that would change along with the planet's natural magnetic variations. His generators would pulse in harmony with the forces coming from deep underground. Vex, Tai felt her breathing quicken. The human was proposing something that violated every principle of Zilithian magnetic agriculture. Stable, controlled fields were the foundation of their technology. The idea of deliberately introducing chaos into the system was unthinkable. Jake spent the next 3 days programming his generators to respond to the planet's magnetic field in real time. His equipment was primitive by Zilithian standards, but it was flexible in ways their advanced systems were not. He could reprogram his generators with simple commands, adjusting their behavior as he learned more about the planet's magnetic patterns. The first test was a disaster. Jake's new system created magnetic pulses that were too strong, too chaotic. The soil in his test plots began to smoke, and several of his generators overloaded. Lisa helped him put out small fires and repair damaged equipment. Maybe we should go back to the old system, Lisa suggested after the 3rd failed attempt. No, Jake said firmly. The principle is right. I just need to find the right balance. On the fourth day, something clicked. Jake had been studying the planet's magnetic field patterns, looking for predictable cycles. He discovered that the apparently random fluctuations actually followed complex but consistent patterns. The planet's magnetic field was like a musical composition with themes and variations that repeated over time. It's a symphony, Jake told Lisa as he showed her the data. The magnetic field isn't chaotic at all. It has rhythm, harmony, structure. We just need to learn to play along. Jake reprogrammed his generators to create what he called a magnetic symphony. Each generator would play its own part, but all of them would work together to create a larger pattern that matched the planet's natural rhythm. The iron particles in the soil would dance to this magnetic music, forming structures that helped plants grow instead of harming them. The Zilithians watched in amazement as Jake's new system came online. The magnetic field readings were unlike anything they had ever seen. Instead of the stable, controlled patterns they expected from agricultural technology, Jake's system created flowing, organic rhythms that seemed almost alive. "This is impossible," Krulvo whispered. "Dynamic magnetic fields can't maintain stable soil structures. The iron particles will be in constant motion. Plant roots can't develop in that environment." But the plants in Jake's test plots began to grow faster than ever before. The magnetic symphony was creating soil structures that weren't just stable, but actively beneficial to plant growth. The iron particles formed channels that carried water and nutrients directly to the roots. The magnetic fields themselves seemed to stimulate plant growth in ways that Zilithian science couldn't explain. Lisa developed a new nutrient delivery system that worked with Jake's magnetic channels. Instead of spreading fertilizer on the surface, she could inject nutrients directly into the magnetic pathways Jake had created. The plants received exactly what they needed, when they needed it, with no waste. Within a week, Jake's test plots were producing crop yields that exceeded anything in the Terran agricultural databases. The hostile magnetic soil had become the most productive growing medium either human had ever seen. Vexthai ran simulation after simulation, trying to understand how Jake's system worked. Every model predicted failure, but the evidence was undeniable. The human had created a new form of agricultural technology that was not only effective but elegant in its simplicity. "He's not just growing crops," she told Commander Zephyron. "He's created a partnership between human technology and planetary systems. His generators aren't controlling the magnetic field. They're participating in it." The commander studied the data with growing amazement. "Our scientists have been trying to solve magnetic soil problems for centuries. We've built massive installations, used enormous amounts of power, created complex control systems. This human is achieving better results with equipment we would consider broken." Vexthai nodded. "He's not thinking like a Zilithian. He's not trying to dominate the hostile environment. He's trying to understand it, work with it, become part of it. It's a completely different approach to science." Jake's deadline was approaching, but he had achieved something remarkable. His magnetic symphony was transforming the hostile planet into a garden. The innovation would have implications far beyond this single world. Any planet with magnetic soil could potentially be made productive using Jake's techniques. The question now was whether the Terran Colonial Authority would recognize the breakthrough they had achieved, or whether they would shut down the project before its true potential could be realized. Jake Morrison's magnetic symphony had been running perfectly for 5 days. His test plots now covered 3 acres of previously barren ground, all of it producing crops at rates that seemed impossible. The plants were not just surviving in the hostile magnetic soil, they were thriving beyond anything Jake had ever imagined. Lisa Chun stood at the edge of the largest test plot, holding her scanner and shaking her head in disbelief. "Jake, these readings can't be right. The corn plants are growing twice as fast as they should." The soil nutrients are actually increasing instead of being depleted. Jake grinned as he adjusted one of his magnetic field generators. The system is learning. The longer it runs, the better it gets at creating the perfect growing conditions. Above them, hidden in their cloaked ship, the Zilithians were having their own crisis of understanding. Vexthai had run every test her equipment could perform. Jake's achievement was not just impressive, it was revolutionary on a galactic scale. How many worlds in our database have magnetic soil problems? She asked KREL, !Vo. Her assistant checked the records. Over 14,000 inhabited worlds have some form of magnetic soil interference. We've classified most of them as unsuitable for agriculture. Vexthai felt the weight of that number. 14,000 worlds that could potentially be made productive using Jake's techniques. Worlds that the Zilithians had written off as hopeless could become gardens. The communication console on Jake's station began beeping. A message was coming in from the Terran Colonial Authority. Jake and Lisa exchanged worried looks as they went inside to receive the transmission. The message was brief and disappointing. Due to budget constraints, the Colonial Authority had decided to conduct Jake's final evaluation remotely. Instead of sending inspectors to see his work in person, they would review his project based on data transmissions and reports. "This is bad," Lisa said after they finished reading the message. "They won't believe what we've accomplished here unless they see it with their own eyes. The data alone won't convince them." Jake sat down heavily in his chair. 8 months of work, and they won't even come to look at it. They'll see our primitive equipment in the photos and dismiss everything we've done. The two humans spent the rest of the day preparing their report. They took thousands of photographs, recorded detailed measurements, and wrote extensive explanations of Jake's magnetic symphony system. But they both knew it wouldn't be enough. The Colonial Authority wanted conventional agricultural success, not innovative breakthroughs that they couldn't understand. Vexthai watched the humans' growing despair with an emotion she didn't recognize. In Zilithian culture, scientific setbacks were accepted without emotional involvement. But seeing Jake and Lisa struggle to document something so important made her feel angry. "Commander," she said to Zephrun, "I request permission to make contact with the humans." The commander looked shocked. "Contact?" "Vexthai, we're on a research mission. We don't have authorization for first contact protocols. What Jake Morrison has achieved down there could change agriculture across the galaxy," Vexthai replied. "If his own species doesn't recognize its value, this breakthrough could be lost forever." Zephrun studied the data from Jake's facility. Even a military commander could see the implications. "You're certain about the significance of his work?" "Absolutely. His magnetic soil technique could make thousands of barren worlds productive. It's the most important agricultural discovery in centuries." The commander was quiet for a long moment. "First contact is a serious decision. Once we reveal ourselves, there's no going back. Are you prepared for the consequences?" Vexthai looked down at Jake and Lisa, who were still working desperately to save their project. The consequences of not acting could be worse. This discovery is too important to lose. That evening, as Jake made his final adjustments to the magnetic symphony, Vexthai made her decision. She ordered the ship to decloak directly above the human research station. Jake was checking his equipment when the massive shadow fell across his test plots. He looked up to see a silver ship unlike anything in human technology hovering silently overhead. The vessel was beautiful and alien, with flowing lines that seemed to grow naturally rather than being constructed. "Lisa," Jake called out, his voice filled with wonder and fear. "You need to see this." Lisa emerged from the station building and froze when she saw the alien ship. For a moment, both humans simply stared upward, trying to process what they were seeing. A beam of light descended from the ship, forming a platform that slowly lowered toward the ground. A figure stood on the platform, clearly not human, but not threatening either. The alien was tall and graceful, with blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer in the planet's sunlight. Vexthai stepped off the platform and approached the two humans. She had activated her suit's translation system, so her words would be understandable to Jake and Lisa. "Dr. Morrison, Dr. Chen," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that human ears had never heard before. "My name is Vexthai. I am a scientist like you. I have been observing your work." Jake found his voice first. You're an alien, a real alien." "I am Zilithian," Vexthai replied. "My people have been studying agriculture for over 3,000 years. We consider ourselves experts in the field." Lisa stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "How long have you been watching us?" "Since you began your magnetic field experiments," Vexthai answered honestly. "What you have accomplished here is remarkable. Your species has achieved something my people believed was impossible." Jake looked confused. "Our equipment is primitive compared to what your technology must be capable of. How could we achieve something you couldn't?" Vexthai gestured toward Jake's magnetic field generators. "You have done something we never considered. Instead of trying to dominate the hostile environment, you chose to work with it. Your approach to the problem is completely different from ours." She walked over to one of Jake's test plots and knelt down to examine the soil. "We have attempted to farm on magnetic worlds for centuries. We always used massive technology and overwhelming power to force the soil to become productive. You used simple equipment and clever thinking to make the soil want to be productive." Lisa was beginning to understand. "You're saying our way works better than yours?" "Not just better," Vexthai replied, standing up. "Your magnetic symphony technique could revolutionize agriculture on thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Worlds that my people have classified as hopeless could become gardens using your methods." Jake felt dizzy. "You're saying our work is important? Really important?" "More important than you can imagine," Vexthai confirmed. "But I understand your own people don't appreciate what you've accomplished." The three scientists stood together. In Jake's transformed field, surrounded by impossible abundance growing in soil that should have been lifeless. The meeting between human innovation and alien expertise was about to change everything. The next morning brought visitors that Jake Morrison never expected to see. 3 ships descended through the planet's atmosphere, 2 human vessels from the Terran Colonial Authority, and the massive Zilithian research ship, now flying openly. For all to see. Dr. Pete Harrison climbed out of the first human ship, followed by 2 other Colonial Authority officials. Pete was the new supervisor assigned to evaluate Jake's project before shutting it down. He had expected to find a failed experiment and some paperwork to complete. Instead, he found Jake standing next to an alien scientist in the middle of the most productive farmland he had ever seen. "What in the name of Earth is going on here?" Pete demanded, staring at Vexthai with undisguised shock. Jake stepped forward, trying to keep his voice calm. "Dr. Harrison, I'd like you to meet Senior Agricultural Scientist Vexthai of the Zilithian Research Collective. She's been observing our work and has some interesting things to tell you about it." Pete looked like he was about to faint. "Aliens, Jake, what have you done? Is this some kind of elaborate hoax?" Vexthai activated her translation device and spoke directly to Pete. "Dr. Harrison, I assure you this is not a hoax. My people have been studying agricultural science for over 3 millennia. What Dr. Morrison has achieved here represents the most significant breakthrough in magnetic soil farming that we have ever encountered." The other Colonial Authority officials were frantically taking readings with their equipment, trying to confirm that they were actually talking to an alien. Their scanners confirmed what their eyes could hardly believe. Vexthai was definitely not human. Commander Zeph Run approached from the Zilithian ship, accompanied by several other alien scientists. The commander had decided that if they were making first contact, they should do it properly. "Greetings, humans," Zephrun said through his own translator. "I am Commander Zephrun. We come in peace and in the spirit of scientific cooperation." "Pete." Harrison sat down on a nearby equipment crate, looking overwhelmed. "This is way above my authority level. I'm just here to evaluate an agricultural project." "Then let us show you what needs to be evaluated," Vexthai said gently. She gestured toward Jake's test plots. "Dr. Morrison, would you please demonstrate your magnetic symphony system for our guests?" Jake nodded and began explaining his work to the growing audience of humans and aliens. He walked them through his test plots, showing how the magnetic field generators worked with the planet's natural forces to create productive soil. Lisa helped by providing the technical data that proved how successful the system had become. "The crop yields are 3 times higher than anything we've achieved on similar worlds," Lisa explained to Pete. "The soil quality is actually improving over time instead of being depleted. And the energy requirements are minimal compared to conventional terraforming techniques." Pete examined Jake's equipment with growing amazement. "But this is all so basic. These generators look like they were built in a garage." "That's exactly why they work," Vexthai interjected. "Dr. Morrison's equipment is flexible and adaptive. Our advanced Zilithian technology is powerful but rigid. We always tried to force hostile environments to submit to our will. Dr. Morrison learned to work with the environment instead." Krovo, Vexthai's assistant, was taking detailed scans of Jake's magnetic field patterns. "These readings are remarkable," he told the assembled group. "The soil structures are self-organizing. The system is creating conditions that improve automatically over time." Commander Zephrun addressed Pete directly. "Dr. Harrison, my science officer tells me that this technique could be applied to over 14,000 worlds in our galactic survey. Worlds that both our species have considered unsuitable for agriculture." Pete was beginning to understand the implications. "You're saying Jake's work here could help terraform thousands of planets?" "More than that," Vexthai replied. "It could change how we think about terraforming entirely. Instead of overwhelming hostile environments with massive technology, we could learn to cooperate with natural systems. It's a completely new approach to planetary development." The demonstration continued for hours. Jake showed the visitors how his magnetic symphony responded to the planet's natural rhythms, how the iron particles formed beneficial structures in the soil, and how the system required minimal maintenance once it was properly calibrated. Silithians shared their own agricultural databases, showing Pete and his team just how revolutionary Jake's achievement really was. Worlds that had been written off as hopeless were suddenly potential agricultural centers. "We would like to propose a partnership," Commander Zephrun announced as the demonstration concluded. Zilithian technology combined with human innovation could solve agricultural problems across the galaxy. Pete looked at his fellow Colonial Authority officials. They were all clearly out of their depth, but they could see the potential of what was being offered. "I'll need to contact Earth immediately," Pete said. "This is far beyond anything I'm authorized to decide. But I can tell you that this project will not be shut down. In fact, I think we're going to need a much bigger research station." Lisa grinned at Jake. "I guess we won't need to worry about funding anymore." Jake looked around at the aliens and humans working together to understand his magnetic symphony system. Zilithian scientists were collaborating with human researchers, sharing knowledge that had been developed over thousands of years. "This is just the beginning," Jake said. "There's so much more we can learn from each other." Vexthai nodded in agreement. "My people have always believed that technological superiority was the key to scientific advancement. You have shown us that creativity and adaptability are equally important, perhaps more important." Over the following weeks, the small research station on Kepler 442b became the center of an unprecedented scientific collaboration. Human and Zilithian researchers worked side by side, developing new applications for Jake's magnetic soil technique. The partnership proved beneficial for both species. Jake's innovative thinking, combined with Zilithian technology, created agricultural solutions that neither could have achieved alone. The magnetic symphony became the foundation for a new field of science that the researchers called cooperative. TERRAF-ORMING. Jake often stood in his original test plots, remembering when he had worked alone with basic equipment and impossible deadlines. Now his simple innovation was changing agriculture across the galaxy. The hostile magnetic soil that had nearly ended his career had become the key to feeding colonies on distant worlds. The breakthrough had happened not because of superior technology or vast resources, but because one human scientist had chosen to work with natural forces instead of fighting against them. It was a lesson that would influence how both species approached scientific challenges for generations to come. The small research station grew into a major facility where humans and Zilithians continued to push the boundaries of agricultural science. Jake's magnetic symphony played on, turning barren worlds into gardens and proving that sometimes the most elegant solutions come from the simplest ideas.